What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Oops, let me make sure I'm bringing everything up here. All right, so today's session is going to be on what happens if you're talking to your stakeholder or whoever wants to have you design their e-learning and they're like, listen, all I want is for you to take this PowerPoint and turn it into e-learning, okay? Can you make it engaging and beautiful? Really engaging and beautiful. All right, we're going to talk about that today because for some of us, this is unacceptable. But how do we get through that? How do we influence the outcome so that we're not creating things that are soul-sucking to everybody, including ourselves? So let me just bring up the feed here, okay, so I can see your fabulous comments. All right, so if you're joining me, just say hi. Also, one of the things that I love hearing, and I'm not hearing enough, is when was the last time you were in a space where you actually learned something really cool or had a really solid learning experience or something that influenced you and you were like, oh man, I can't wait to use that in my own e-learning designs because it's so cool and so engaging and so meaningful to me. So I'd love to have in the comments, have you share maybe some of the meaningful experiences that you've had online that were like, yeah, this has definitely influenced my work, because I look for those all the time, and those are the things we share in our community as well, right? Like, here's a solid experience, here's what, here are some pieces that are working really, really well. How can I leverage this in my work? And one of the things that happens is you start getting really good at figuring out, why are these things engaging? Why are they working, right? And can I get a framework around this that actually helps me, right? So it's wonderful to have you guys here. So it's kind of cool. I got a little bit of a story for you. I was watching this interview with the founder of Donors Choose, right? And basically, I don't know if you guys haven't heard of this organization. Basically what happens is you can apply there saying, like a lot of teachers do, they'll apply for funds so that they can basically crowdsource resources that they wouldn't normally get, and they get to ask for things like new equipment for their classrooms and things like that, and then the donors choose where they want to donate their money, which project. And he said that one of the things that was kind of disappointing is one of the top requests from teachers is to get an upgrade on their projector, right? Which is, if you don't know what a projector is basically this thing where you, old school wise, you would put written notes on a clear plastic piece, and then you would put it on this and it would project it on a wall so everybody could see it. And he said one of the things that was disappointing is that teachers are asking for these projectors that are digital so they can upgrade, this experience. But what they're then doing is using the digital projector to still project notes, handwritten notes or digital notes. So you're actually not improving the experience very much, other than creating a better high-res image. And he thought that was kind of ridiculous. And of course, for us to look at that, and we're like, well, obviously, why in the world would you get better tech if the stuff that you're getting, right, is still the same, except maybe a little bit high res? And to be honest with you, when I think about some of those projects that we do, those e-learning projects and those conversion projects, that's kind of how I feel a lot of us get to work, right? We've now got a better digital projector, and we just get to wrap things up that at the base suck, right? Just text that somebody's pushing out there, that is now what you have to somehow make pretty, right? And maybe use a better font. And as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of organizations that are doing that out there, and one of the things that I think happens is that there's this talent, right? There's this passion, there's this curiosity. There's a lot of people that I talk to that are in our industry that they'll stay up weekends looking at their projects and honing their craft. They'll look up experiences, they'll get inspiration from games their kids are playing to actually incorporate into their learning. For them, it is their passion. It is what they do. It is what they wake up for. It is what they want to get really good at. And when when they get handed a storyboard or a PowerPoint presentation and are told, hey, go and turn this into a engaging e-learning experience. Oh yeah, and by the way, do that in a week. You almost feel like that's a slap in the face, right? Like you're like, listen, I've got so much more to offer, right? Like let me, right? And one of the challenges is that you, as a person who's really passionate about this, probably knows their software inside and out, can create anything they want it to. And some of the people in our community are amazing at this. Some of the people in our community have built their own LMSs from scratch, right? You feel absolutely undervalued because you're like, listen, I could add so much to this conversation. I could add so much to this project, right? If you only didn't hand me this poo-poo storyboard. And the challenge is that we have all this intel, we geek out on this stuff, and in fact, we become these kind of, e-learning experts. And one of the things that's hard for experts to do is to kind of become, kind of familiar with the mind of the novice who has no idea, basically our stakeholders who have no idea what we do or how much we geek out on this and how much we think, how much value different approaches would provide. And so I've heard people say, well, how do I've told them about scenarios, or I've told them about interactive stories, and they told me that that's not what they want. They told me they just want engaging e-learning, so just to take whatever I'm doing, I was given, and just to convert it. And I'm thinking, we got to change our approach, because we are feeding everybody all the way down to like the technobabble that we have in our industry, right? We're feeding people who are outside of our industry or outside of our domain. We're feeding them features instead of selling them on the benefit. And this reminds me of that story, and it was about Henry Ford, right? And how he went around and he asked people, what would you like? If he went around and asked people what they actually wanted, they would have told him, instead of a car, they would have said, I want a faster horse, right? Of course they would. Why not? Why would they ask that? Because that's all they knew. They knew there were horses, and to move around faster, they would just want a faster one. So it was up to him to create something for them that they could actually see themselves in without asking them to crowdsource. It's like people would have never asked for an iPhone if somebody said, hey, what do you want? What's the next thing? What can we do to augment your life? People would have been like, I just want a faster fax machine or something, or can you create a Walkman that doesn't skip, right? So your job is to think like Henry Ford. You've geeked out, there's an engine possibility out there, right? And what you're trying to do is not tell them, when they come to you with a problem, say, hey, I have a car. And they'll be like, that sounds way too complicated. I just want a horse. I know how to deal with horses, right? You're going to say, listen, what are you trying to achieve, right? And what have we tried before that's been either successful or unsuccessful? Well, I've got this approach here, and I'm thinking, I want to learn more about what you're trying to do and why it's important for you to be engaging. Because when people say that, there's a reason behind it. Either they've had a bad experience, they've launched things before that really sucked and people didn't enjoy. Maybe they also want to be proud of the things that are going out. But then when you say, what, we can do interactive storytelling and scenarios, they're like, oh my God, but I don't have a big budget. I'm really just doing this. And also, you're telling me things that really are outside of my comfort zone. And that is going to terrify me, because I'm trying to do a good job without looking like a fool. So, if that sounds like something that you're struggling with, you really got to think about your approach, right? You're not talking to people who understand design. You're not talking to people who understand scenarios. You're not all those things that are mainstream in our world are not mainstream in their world. You got to step back and instead be like a really good salesperson. So a good salesperson is not going to pull out the spec sheet for the iPhone, right? Or the car. They're going to say, hey, what do you want to achieve? And they'll tie it back to, Jim's going to say, you know what? One of the things that really I struggle with is every time I drive down, my car in my neighborhood, I know all my neighbors are judging me because mine's the rust bucket. And you're like, okay, all right, Jim. So you're looking for something that looks sexy. Okay, all right. What about, do you have kids? Yes. Okay, all right. So, we've got one that looks good and also super safe. Like safety is important to you. So you try and do a little bit of that consulting first before offering up a solution. Will that solve all your problems? No. Will that get rid of really crappy storyboards that you're handed because somebody else is now in charge of that storyboard and they're just basically showing you how to chunk text on different pages? Yes, that will happen. So for those of you who are stuck in those situations, right, there's several options. One, and this has worked for me. Like everything that I tell you here, I'm not reading some books or some studies and then, putting my own little language on it and going, all right, I've looked at all these college studies and this is what I think you should do. The reason I'm telling you this is because for the past decade, I have been also banging my head against the wall, producing projects, working with top, Fortune 500 companies from the retail world to humanitarian operations. And everybody thinks they're like, they've got their own unique problems, but there are common threads along every single L&D department, right? Whether it is lack of engagement, whether it is tons of resources, but nobody looking at them, whether it's, trying to be fast with creating things, but also having like a huge stack of things that needs to be pushed out there, right? Everybody's struggling with this stuff. And so when I'm telling you this stuff, these are strategies that I've used. Go ahead, test them out in your own context. Some will work better than others, right? But it is based on my experience and what I've applied and what has worked. Will all of them work? No. Have all of them worked for me in the same, all across the board? No. Some of them work sometimes, but they're better than nothing, right? So one of the things you can do is, usually what I like to do is if I have a ton of content or a content dump that's been handed to me, and no longer is that the case, by the way. I now only take projects where I can be providing people with a specific product, basically, which is an interactive story. If somebody says, I want a content dump, I basically tell them, this isn't the place for you. This is not the place that sells content dumps. But what I have done before is say, you know what, let's really contextualize this because people won't know why they need to read all this info. So how about we begin this chapter with a contextual scenario and some decisions that somebody needs to make up front. This really helps people contextualize what's coming next. And in fact, if we do this right, they'll actually be more actively engaged in the reading because they'll be reading for the answer if they were right? That has worked very well. But I no longer do that stuff because content dumps suck, right? So that's one approach. If you already are stuck at a storyboard, there's no way to modify it. You can augment it with contextual scenarios up front. If you want to tie that with a single character throughout, beautiful. You can do this. It'll work for you. Number 2, one of the things that happens is when you begin these projects, a lot of people will go, well, the subject matter expert is my customer in a business. And so whatever they say, I'm trying to please them. Let me tell you something. The only person you're trying to please is the learner. And the reason you need to please them, and when I say please, I mean engage them deeply so that they take action and improve their output. And the reason is if you please that person, then what happens is the business wins, right? Behavior change has happened. Somebody's taken some action. Maybe 50% of the people you actually show the module to actually go on to the next step, which is actual training. Oh my God, amazing, right? The interactive story you've launched has propelled them to actually take action. That is a freaking win. Amazing, okay? Don't sell yourself short. That's amazing, okay? So you do that, and people are like checking out stuff that they've never checked out before because they now see its value. They now see it's actually going to help them. You've sold them on the journey of stepping outside of their comfort zone. You're killing it, right? If half of the people you show your interactive story to do that, you're winning. So when a SME says, I don't like that, or this is, we need more content, your job is not to please the subject matter expert. Your job is to make sure the business wins, because without the business, the SME don't exist either, right? So there's a way to collaborate here, but you're not supposed to lie down and take these things just because somebody else says so and they have limited knowledge of what is possible, right? You want to come in on equal ground here. Now, I see a lot of people coming in with this like servant attitude. I get it, servant leader, I get it. But you're also a professional. And so give advice as a professional. Act on these things as a professional, right? As a trusted advisor. Because you may not win them all, but if you keep pushing and you keep working with that sphere of influence, you will have impact. And so don't lie down on these things because somebody is more senior than you. You are coming in with your own domain of knowledge. So own it. They know their subject matter expertise, they have it, and you have your own. And these two things are supposed to like mesh together. You're not supposed to be like, okay, well, whatever you want me to. It doesn't work that way. Now, in some places, let's say academia, you might have a different relationship because the subject matter expert owns the content and they really are doing all those things, right? That's fine. That's a different relationship. However, if you tell that person, listen, if we do this right, this is going to go viral. People are going to talk about your course after they leave this. Would you not want that? Let me help you, right? Let me help you. So what I want you to consider is, so there's that aspect, right? Really just coming in with that. Then there's the third tip that I have for you, which is probably contrary to what most people are going to tell you out there. And it has to do with that, carte blanche kind of thing, like we're coming in and we're going to discover what you need. Once you do your needs analysis, like really figure out what's the problem we're trying to solve here. Is it people don't know about this? Is it that they have, beliefs that are holding them back from executing? Do they, are they resistant to change? Whatever it is, right? You're trying to figure out what the problem is. Is it skills? Is it knowledge? Is it ability? Whatever. Once you've got that figured out, is it access? Sometimes it's access. So once you've figured that out and you've really honed in and you can say, hey, you know what? This really is a situation where we're going to use scenarios and story to bring people in so that we can launch them towards a new training, initiative and really get them excited about taking on this new training, this new skill set, right? Whatever. Once you've done that thinking and questioning, and you're really behind that project, you're not starting from a blank page. If you're doing an interactive story, which is scenarios mixed with story, and then you basically give the person the autonomy and the agency to go through that story, this is not a make up your own thing and let's just start from scratch. Because there's solid frameworks, right? And a solid story framework is character who wants something and something's in the way. So the character ends up being, anyways, I'm getting into details here that are probably too much for this session, so I'll talk about it in another way. But basically what I want you to consider is that an interactive story and any kind of learning activity has a framework, right? And so what happens is your tried, tested, and proven strategies that you've done and used before, especially for scenarios and modules that use stories, that you refine to become your product. And then what's magical about that is that when somebody comes to you and says, I want to engage people deeply, we have a ton of resources I want to point them to. I don't want to remake those resources. I just want to create something that'll help them get there and get them excited, be aware of their gaps. You're like, okay, guess what? I can pull this off the shelf. I got this tool and we can just plug it in and use it. Let's add your context and your story and our target learner and all those things. The framework underneath does not need to be reimagined, because when you open it up like that, when everything is up for discussion, you not only devalue all the work you've done before to create that framework because you've done some work and tested it, but the other thing that happens is people start adding things that don't belong in there, which is, can I add a 15-page PDF after every question or after every scenario? I don't know. I think that might actually impede the experience. So if you open it up to this, everything's up for discussion, you basically just said, I have no expertise here. Let's just put in whatever you want. You want to have a product, basically. Oh, you want this kind of learning? Here's the framework that we're going to use. You want this kind of learning? You probably already do that, but you need to do that up front, right? You're not doing a brainstorming session on what are we going to use. You're coming in as a trusted advisor and consultant saying, oh, okay, you guys have this problem. Here's what I suggest. These are the 2 things I think would make a big impact here. And which one do you want to go with? Really, that's it. Give them 2 options. One's red, one's blue, same car, beige or light beige. But because you've seen this before, you've done the analysis, you've asked all the right questions, you understand the impact, you're going to have one of the best solutions out there that they would have never thought of, right? Because they don't geek out in their world. So that's what you got to do. You got to come in saying, you know what, I got this. I got it. And people love that. When they come to you for ideas and solutions, they love it when you actually feel confident that you can help them. Does that mean the final product is you're going to be a bully about it? Absolutely not. The best products are when people see what you've got, collaborate on it, give you feedback. But there's some things that are there set up that take the pressure off. They don't feel they have to give you feedback on everything. They have to give you feedback where their strengths are, which is the subject matter expertise, right? So if this sounds like something you want to get solid at, especially interactive storytelling, and you want to develop your own framework that you can then pull off the shelf when it's appropriate and just kick butt in there and be like, hey, let's add context, let's add the sexy juice, let's do it. Guess what? I've got 3 more seats left. In April, we're doing an interactive storytelling masterclass that's launching. In the meantime, we've got a big community, and I'm looking for a few good people who, like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, really, they're the kind of people that know that this is not, like, storytelling isn't a flash in the pan. You know, scenarios using context is not flash in the pan. People are always going to love that and in fact crave it, right? Decisions, being autonomous. We all want to be in charge. So if you can give that to the people you're training, my God, right? That's awesome. How many times have you been able to do that? So one of the things that I would love to do is, if you're the person who also, you know, geeks out on this in the evenings, gets inspiration from all over the place, wants to take themselves to the next level because they're already reached that little plateau and they just want to push through to the next level. They know how to use the software, but they just want the next thing that's going to take them there, and it's for themselves. It's not necessarily for a project, but for themselves, because this is what they do. Then I'd love to talk to you. So I'll put the link underneath the video and we'll chat. We'll see if I can help, and we'll see if we're a good fit for this cohort in the at the end of the month. All right. So I hope you had a fabulous Easter. By the way, I ate too many eggs and they weren't chocolate, but it was really satisfying. But I'm good on eggs for like a year till next Easter. So I hope you have a fabulous rest of the week. If you enjoyed this, please share it. Let me know. Also, if you put comments in, make sure you add your questions in your comments, because I will be checking them and I will be addressing them later this week. And I will see you here again around this time tomorrow. All right. So thank you so much for stopping by and adding your questions and your ideas in the comments. All right. Take care, friends. Bye.